You've camped out in all of its most secluding hiding spots, you've spent hours scouring its landscape through a variety of scopes, and you've run, rolled and dived and slid across about every square inch of it. But how well do you really know Verdansk? Where did it come from? And why is it that size? And where exactly is it? So let's find out with this deep dive into the complete history of Call of Duty's most iconic map. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was Verdansk. In fact, construction on the now famous city began years before any of us would see it, all the way back in 2017. It all began with a bright idea that Infinity Ward's co-heads Patrick Kelly and Dave Stoll had, which went by the codename Magma, and presumably that's because it was hot stuff. In a nutshell, the idea was to make a Call of Duty flavoured Battle Royale game, but not just any Battle Royale game, the biggest Battle Royale game anyone had ever seen. Racking up 100 million players in its first year, they certainly ended up making it big. But at this point, they were also talking about the scale of the game itself. They wanted to have 150 players duking it out at the same time. Actually, they initially wanted to have 200 before realising that was actually too many, so they needed to build a map fit for that sort of large-scale warfare. Naturally, this meant they had to think big, and very big, although they actually found themselves going too big at certain points and needing to rein their designers in. I guess less is more isn't really part of the Infinity Ward employee handbook. As if the sheer scale of what they were trying to build wasn't daunting enough, they also wanted their new game to stay true to the level of detail and graphical fidelity that Call of Duty is just so well renowned for. With players able to move freely in and out of all the buildings and loads of environmental variety, they quickly discovered that while generating loads of similar looking buildings would be a great way to save on computer memory, it actually made things more difficult for the human one. When everything looks the same, we really struggle to figure out where we are. Thus, Infinity Ward found themselves tasked with building a ginormous map filled with distinctive locations and visual diversity. And just to make things even trickier for themselves, they were also determined to make their Battle Royale map a place where players were encouraged to keep moving and, more importantly, take risks. This aspect actually came from Kelly's experiences playing Battle Royale games with his son. Since they were taking turns on their family's high-end PC, they instituted a strict no camping rule to keep either of them from hogging the game too much. And it turned out this approach actually led to the sort of fast-paced, aggressive gameplay that he was determined to bake into Call of Duty's new Battle Royale game. And we'll get to exactly how he managed that in a bit, but this next point is important. The point is, Infinity Ward set themselves a pretty challenging blueprint to work from, and then unveiled the result in 2020 with the reveal of the shiny new free-to-play Battle Royale game that would go side by side with Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So it was time to take our first steps into Verdansk. So let's look here at our very first map of Verdansk and have ourselves a guided tour. According to Call of Duty history, Verdansk is the capital city of Kostovia. Both fictional, by the way. I'm sure you already knew that, but I just didn't want to assume. And it was occupied by the Germans during World War II, who built an elaborate network of underground bunkers to store weapons in. As the war ended, these bunkers were abandoned and barricaded off. Although that hasn't stopped other people from trying to get their hands on them. Quite the opposite, in fact. There's loads of good stuff in there. In fact, Verdansk has had a pretty lively time over the years, including myself when I play it. But it seemed like we had only just set foot in the city when the whole place was engulfed in a giant cloud of toxic gas. The second season of the Modern Warfare era saw the terrorist organisation Al-Qatala launching a full-scale invasion, so that was pretty rough to kick things off. And then in 2021, a horde of zombies went rampaging through the streets right up until they were taken out by a ballistic missile strike. For anyone that remembers that event, it's a very good one. So yeah, it's just been a really dramatic place on the whole. While the history of Verdansk is well known, it does present something of a geographical conundrum. Modern Warfare put it in the very real Caucasus Mountains, while Warzone's Season 4 cinematic put it next to Iran. Then a cinematic during the third season of Cold War had it over by Mount Yamantor, while the coordinates given in Season 4 suggest the Kuban region north of Russia. Then Modern Warfare 3 confidently placed it between Georgia and Armenia. Basically, it's a bit like Springfield, where nobody is quite sure exactly where it is, but you kind of also know at the same time. Once you get there, though, the geography of Verdansk becomes a lot clearer. The sprawling city is divided into 5 main sections, which are then divided into zones, each with their own unique points of interest, which range from military bases, airports, you've got stadium, of course, and also TV station. True to their names, they're all pretty interesting. And Verdansk sections are pretty interesting too, offering players a range of environments that are very diverse for you all to enjoy. Up north, we've got the snow-capped hills and the famous Gora Dam. It's a great place just to get away from it all and enjoy some fresh air. And for a more metropolitan feel, the west has Atlas Superstore, the best hot drop in all the land. And it's also got Boneyard, another iconic place in Call of Duty history, both of which are great places to pick up a few bits and pieces. Over in the southwest, you can take a stroll along Baraket Promenade, which is a horrible place to fight, and we've all been there. But then you also go over to Hospital, which is somewhere where I've died quite a lot, which is quite ironic for a Hospital. I hate fighting there. I don't know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. You should also, don't forget to check out High-Rise Building. Of course, very iconic, was once Nakatomi Plaza. You can take a jaunt out to the east and enjoy its rolling farmland and, well, prison, just down there. An awful place to land, an awful place to fight. But speaking of prison, that does bring up one of the most important locations of Verdansk. A place where, I imagine, just like me, you guys have spent a lot of time in, and that is the Gulag. So look, earlier in the video, we talked about how Infinity Ward wanted this to be a map that encouraged players to take risks, and the Gulag did exactly that, because if you got downs and you got taken out of the game, you would go into the Gulag, you would 1v1 someone else, and if you won, you would get to respawn. This is the first that we really saw when it came to regaining in Battle Royales. And the Gulag just played a huge role in making sure that Verdansk felt distinct from any other Battle Royale in its mechanics and in its feel. So Verdansk all up just was a place that screamed Call of Duty. There were Easter eggs all over the place, like Burger Town restaurants, you had teddy bears from Modern Warfare 2 and 3. In fact, whole sections of Verdansk are inspired or lifted from previous games, especially the original Modern Warfare trilogy. As you explore Verdansk, you'll find a slightly modified version of Kill House from the OG Modern Warfare over in Arklov Peak military base. The Scrapyard map from Modern Warfare 2 is over at Boneyard, and a modified version of the Standoff map from Black Ops 2 has sprouted up over by the farmland. It really just screams Call of Duty as you traverse and you rotate and you fight in different areas. It feels new, but it also feels comforting at the same time. All of this basically guarantees that long-time players will feel like they're taking a walk down memory lane whenever they go strolling through Verdansk, although they'll probably be better running and probably slide cancelling. Like all great cities, Verdansk has changed a lot over time. In fact, it started evolving pretty much as soon as we got there. And when I mean evolving, I don't mean it got a Gales and a cinema. It grew an actual entire railway system in the August of 2020, followed by a subway system in September, and I guess the fans at Stadium cheered a little too loudly during Season 5 because they eventually blew the whole thing up. When Halloween rolled around in 2020, Verdansk got the best spooktacular makeover with the Haunting of Verdansk, possibly one of the most iconic events ever to come to Warzone. It had everything. It had pools of blood, it had ghostly figures, it had players running around in spooky masks, and also scaring the life out of me as I opened loot boxes. Oh, God! During the limited time Ghosts of Verdansk mode, the map was also filled with ringing telephones, which doesn't sound that scary until you heard who was on the other end of the line. Maybe you just wanted to know what your favourite scary movie was. When it wasn't being quite so scary, the place just came to feel like home, and we found ourselves returning to Verdansk in several Modern Warfare 3 missions, infiltrating a Russian gulag, infiltrating a military base, and thwarting a false flag operation over at Gora Dam. But, of course, like anything, all good things must come to an end, and our big Verdansk adventure eventually concluded in explosive fashion. In April 2021, a special event began which threw 100 players into a chaotic survival mode matchup, featuring a ravenous horde of player-controlled zombies, and it was great fun right up until the closing cutscene in which some no-good Killjoy dropped an entire nuclear bomb on the place. How could you do that? I had so many memories there. But that was it. That was the end of Verdansk, or so you would think. That same month, the third season of Warzone's Black Ops Cold War era kicked off, introducing us to an extremely groovy new version of its iconic map. It was new, but it was old. It was a very old version of it, in fact. It was Verdansk 84. Winding back the clock a few decades provided the perfect opportunity to remodel the city in all sorts of fun ways. Not exactly drenched in neon like anything else set in the 80s, but in its very own Call of Duty way. The whole thing was totally rethemed, complete with 5 revamped locations and 7 brand new ones. There were some major changes like the renovation of the airport interior, Verdansk Arena, which is in the middle of the big old revamp, as well as some minor changes like the addition of the old mine and the Karst salt mines. Get it? Minor? As the seasons progressed, all sorts of new locations and points of interest were added to this 80s-style urban expanse, including a whole mess of crashed satellites and CIA outposts, which were basically everywhere back then. I hear. I wasn't around for that. Speaking of iconic, Die Hard's Nakatomi Plaza even made an appearance in 2021 to help us all enjoy that festive feeling. Although it was only May at that time, but you know, you get it. Then in June, Verdansk also started sprouting mysterious red doors, which would transport players to another random location in the map, which was very confusing, but absolutely brilliant. There was no better rush than with your team going in there, getting an advanced UAV, popping out of a red door, clearing a squad. That movement was just brilliant. I've said this, but I'll say it again. All good things must come to an end, which is what happened when Call of Duty Vanguard arrived in December 2021 and brought with it its very own brand new map. This was, of course, Caldera. This is a Pacific island with its own fascinating place with rich history, but, you know, this isn't the complete history of Caldera, so who cares? Let's move on. You really cannot keep a good Verdansk down, though. The OG Warzone map will be making its grand return on April 3rd to give new players a chance to experience it and Warzone vets a chance to go back to where it all began. So, what new surprises will Verdansk have in store for us this time? We don't know just yet, but given there never seems to be a quiet minute in this place, you best be ready for basically anything. And for me particularly, I'm just really excited about going back to some of these most iconic locations. I have so many incredible memories, whether it's fighting in Boneyard, it's fighting in Stadium, it's getting trapped up by Dam, or it's being pressed by a squad in Quarry. This map is just so iconic to so many Call of Duty players, and especially Warzone players, over the last 5 years. So now the history lesson is over, how are we feeling about Call of Duty's return to Verdansk? I'm particularly extremely excited, and I can't wait to drop back in. But let me know in the comments, let me know where you're going to be landing first, and let me know what you want them to add back to Verdansk. I want red doors. Let's hear it. So, thanks for watching. If you're enjoying these entire history of videos, let us know in the comments, and let us know what you want us to cover next. And we will see you next time.